thank you for joining us today and for being part of this webinar. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Melissa, my job is to welcome you. I'm Ian Couper. I'm the African Regional Editor for Rural and Remote Health, and I've been involved in rural and remote health for 20 odd years. And I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa at Stellenbosch University. And it's a pleasure to be with you today. Morning my time, but you are morning, afternoon, evening, middle of the night. I'm not sure what time, wherever you are. And I'll just ask my colleagues to introduce themselves as well. Amanda.
Thank you, Ian. My name's Amanda Barnard. I'm the Australasian Regional Editor for Remote and Rural Health. Like Ian, I've been involved in rural health for many, many years. And I'm an academic general practitioner working with a rural clinical school that is based in southeast New South Wales in Australia.
Thanks, Amanda. Melissa?
Hello everyone, I'm Melissa Storey. I'm the Senior Editor for Rural and Remote Health. So my job is to support the editorial board, to support reviewers, to support authors. Lovely to meet you all.
Thanks, Melissa. Let's move on to the next slide. We're going to start proceedings with an acknowledgement of country, and I hand over to Amanda.
Thank you. We wish to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the original Australians. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the lands on which we're meeting today and their ongoing connection to the land, water and sky, and pay respect to all the elders past, present and emerging. We particularly welcome and acknowledge Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander, Maori and First Nation peoples from around the world who may be joining us today. Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks, Amanda. So just some housekeeping. Today's webinar is being recorded and a link will be shared with you within 24 hours. And this will be on the website and available for other people to look at so that it is a resource for reviewers going forwards. We invite questions. Please put your questions in the Q&A box at the screen. You will see in the panel at the bottom or top, depending on your setup, there's a Q&A. Please type questions at any stage. You'll see we will have 3 sections in this webinar, and we'll answer some questions at the end of each. And then at the end, we will answer, try and answer any remaining questions. If we don't get to all of them, we will deal with them by email afterwards. Just to say, yes, everybody is muted, but you are able to ask questions in the chat, and some we'll deal with live and some we will respond to in writing in the Q&A section. Thanks, Melissa. So the 3 sections I referred to is we're going to talk about what peer review is. We're going to talk about what editors need, and then we're going to talk about the process specifically in rural and remote health. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Amanda to cover the first section. Thanks.
Thanks very much indeed. So when we start thinking about this, I think the key word here is peer review. And what we're talking about is the process by which colleagues all over the world who are interested in rural and remote health look at the research, the project reports, the commentaries, the reviews that their peers and colleagues have done and assess them in a number of ways. But it's that notion of this is a collegiate endeavour, and we are peers in a community of interest, of practice around rural and remote health that I think are really key, the key principles underlining what we're doing. Next slide, thanks. So reviewing then is obviously for academic integrity. We don't want to publish any articles that are, for example, don't have ethics approval or that are not ethical in their research undertaking, that the methods and the results don't match the conclusions. And so academic integrity is one of the key parts. One of the other ones is feedback to authors, and this is equally as important. The journal encourages submissions from people internationally and people into rural and remote health, and people who may be in the early stages of their careers in research, as well as those at the later stages. And Ian's going to talk a little bit more about how your comments can be really helpful to authors. And the other one, I think, is the one I alluded to when I talked about peer. Our review is to see what is the fit of this submission to our journal and to our community of interest and practice, both on a regional level and on an international level. And I think the journal is one of the key features about the journal is that we have a number of articles which may be very regional in their focus, but what the lessons of them are and what the conclusions are of interest to our wider international community. Thanks, Melissa. So what I'm going to walk you through now is the broad process of review, and when you as aspiring or new reviewers get involved in this process. So the very first thing that happens when something is submitted is that there's a screening process by the journal team. So Melissa and the very small, I must say, team go through and check for appropriate ethics approval, check that the referencing style is correct. They do a plagiarism check. When the articles got through all those, it then gets reviewed by the regional and associate editor team. So here in Australia, for example, I'm the regional editor, but I have a team of 3 associate editors. And we will all look at an article, not in as much depth as a reviewer may, but we read through the article and make a decision whether we're going to reject it outright, send it to review, or suggest that it may not be in the appropriate format and that the authors may wish to resubmit in a different format. So then it gets sent to review, and that is you. We try to send, well, we do send articles to 3 reviewers. We try to get 1 international and 2 regional reviewers. After you've done your work, the associate editor or regional editor who's got carriage of that particular article will look at the reviews, read them through, consider what they say, consider how that relates to what we thought as the editorial team, and then make a decision whether the article's rejected, whether it's accepted, or whether we'll consider it with changes that the reviewers have suggested. The authors are then sent the anonymous reviewer feedback to consider. They resubmit with their revisions, and the relevant associate editor then reviews that and makes the decision to accept it for publication. Thanks, Melissa. So when we do the regional team review, the criteria and things we are looking for are, how does this article contribute to the evidence base relevant to the health of rural and remote communities and or to practice and policy? So it's a broad range of interests and contributions to a broad range of evidence base. And the question that we ask ourselves is, so what? What difference will this article make? How will this article help move the agenda of rural health forward? We do prefer that there is significance for international readership, or at least generalisations and suggestions how it might be generalisable to an international audience. We consider the quality of the work and ideas. Is there appropriate originality? Is there rigour? Is there academic integrity? And we also look for appropriate authorship. And this is particularly important when we have research articles that are based on work with Indigenous communities or in the developing world. So work with these people must include contribution and authorship from those groups or that country. The principle, and there was an editorial article that our editor, Paul Worley, did with other leading rural health journal editors about this very issue. And I think the phrase is nothing about Indigenous people without Indigenous peoples. Thanks, Melissa. Okay, so when that decision's been made that the article will be sent to review, the regional editor or associate editor selects reviewers from the Rural and Remote Health database. And Melissa will tell you a little bit later on about how we ask reviewers to nominate keywords so the algorithms can match the keywords of the articles with the keywords that the reviewers have said their areas of interest are. So as I said, we aim for 2 regional and 1 international reviewer. So if you do get an invitation to review, just remember you're not alone. The decision to accept or reject isn't made just on your comments, but your comments are very valued as part of that team contribution. The database algorithm, as I said, matches keywords, but we also often look for a match in previous reviews that people might have done, or particularly articles that they have submitted to the journal themselves. Then the invitation to review is sent out by the regional editor or associate editors. And you'll hear us saying this quite a few times today. Please accept or decline that invitation as soon as you receive it, because obviously if you decline it, we can go on very quickly and get somebody else to review. And we do ask people to complete their review in 2 weeks. We do know that this is sometimes a challenge, and we do ask you, if you don't think you can, to decline that or let us know. Ian will talk a little bit more about that. But one of the challenges and holds up in the process is waiting for reviewers' responses when people have agreed. Okay, thanks, Melissa. And then from review to publication, the regional editor and associate editors make their decision based on the reviews, and the decision will be to either accept the paper or accept the paper after minor or major revision. And that's usually related to strengthening the database arguments or identifying areas where additional data or information is required. Sometimes that's called consider with revision, where they're really significant major revisions rather than guaranteeing that we'll accept it. And then, as I said, that revision is reviewed and goes on to publication. Or we may, at that stage, after we've read your reviews and taken into consideration your recommendations and comments, we may reject the paper for failing to meet the criteria that we've set out. Thanks. So I want to just talk briefly about the types of papers that come in, and therefore the sorts of areas for review that we're interested in people with skills. So there's obviously the original research type paper that has a word limit of 5,000 and is a research manuscript. We also have a category called project report, which again has a very structured abstract. But we also ask for that to think about what are the lessons learnt. And this is a report on the design or implementation or evaluation of a project. And what we often find is people will put things in as original research, and really they're a project report. They're an evaluation of often a really interesting and valuable innovation that's happened, but that's the appropriate category. There's also a category of review, and our recent stats have told us that these are in fact some of the most read articles that the journal produces. And these can be a narrative or a scoping review. And obviously we need information about the methodology, or a systematic review. And there are very clear criteria in the PRISMA statement for those. So they're the most common types of articles that we receive and that we publish, but there are others, research letters and commentaries and things. Thanks, Melissa. So where you'll find information about all this is on the bottom of the homepage. So you've got a screenshot there of the homepage. And if you come right down to the very bottom, and there is quite a bit of scrolling down because there's all the, great articles that have just been produced there, published there. So if you come down and on the far left-hand side, you can see where the cursor is, there is a section called About. And in it, down towards the bottom, there is information for reviewers. And that is particularly, again, another resource as well as this webinar. And up above that, there is information for authors. And that's really worth reading for the reviewers, just to skim through that. The types of papers are in there, the referencing styles, anything you might want to be thinking about. Oh, what's going on in this one? Just go back to the information for authors. So there is that additional information there on the front page for you. Okay, thank you. I haven't seen any questions come through yet, but if you think of any, please put them down and we can answer them at the end. And we might hand over to Ian now.
Well, I actually thought, Amanda, although there are no questions, one occurred to me that I don't think we're covering is what do the reviewers get when they are invited to, on what basis do they decide to accept or reject review, the information we give to them?
I think Melissa's going to go into detail with that, but they get the title and the abstract. So they've got a bit there to go on in terms of what the article is about and whether it's going to match their interests and expertise.
Thanks. Okay, so I will then take over. Thanks, Melissa. If we can move on to the next one. So I'm going to talk about what do we as editors need? What are we looking for from reviewers next? So just to remind you again of the purpose of peer review, it's about improving quality of research, essentially, the integrity of research, as Amanda said. But in order to do this, we need to be your help to guide us in terms of the value of the research, and also to remember that we're trying to assist authors in presenting their work effectively. So, I think that critical review is not just about kind of quality control from our side, it's also about assisting and helping authors. Next slide. So we realize that maybe you don't know who editors are, and just to explain how it works is that in our structure, we have a number of different levels, but essentially, Amanda spoke about journal staff. We have very few paid staff in the journal. We have Melissa, we have a journal manager. Those are essentially the paid staff in the journal. The rest of us, the editorial team, are all in voluntary capacity. That's commonly the case in many journals. Some of the more commercial journals do have paid editors at various levels. But for the rest of us, we are doing this on a voluntary basis because we believe in it, and it's how we want to support research in the area. Our structure is that we have an editor-in-chief. We have the journal staff mentioned. Paul Worley, by the way, is the editor-in-chief. And then we have regional editors, as Amanda mentioned. And in some of the regions, not all of them, we have associate editors as well who work with and support the regional editors. And we have an editorial board that helps to guide the structure of the processes, academic processes of the journal. There's a separate management board that the editor-in-chief is involved with, but not the other editors. In terms of becoming an editor, For the regional editors or associate editors, if we are going to fill or establish a post there, it gets advertised through the journal and through other lists, and people apply. We go through a selection process to ensure that people not only know about research and the processes, but also it's about the interest and understanding of rural health and rural health related research. Next slide, please. So what should you do if you are going to be reviewing a manuscript for us? You will have already seen the title and the abstract in the email that's come through, but now you're going to review it. And so read the title again in a different light, saying, is this appealing? Is this interesting? Is this relevant? And you might only be able to decide some of this once you've read the whole article, but does it accurately capture what the article is about? And then read the abstract. At the end of the abstract, you should have a clear idea what is in the article and what it is about. If you don't have a clear idea by the end of reading the abstract, that's a problem. And so the abstract will need reconsideration. Then read through the whole article. Some people like to read it through and once just to get an idea, then go back. Others, as they read, will make comments for themselves. The important thing is to note general comments about the article in addition to any specific notes that you might make as you go along. And then once you've done that, then you could compose the review according to the structure that Melissa will show you a bit later. Next slide. So the format of the review, and as I said, Melissa will show actually on the website what it looks like. There is a scoring system, so you'll have to rate a number of categories on a Likert kind of scale. That is important for us in terms of a quick glance at knowing how this paper was rated. But actually the most important thing for us is the more qualitative comments. The general comments that you send to us that identify strengths and weaknesses, the suggestions you offer for improvement to enhance the quality, and how much you feel it has scientific merit and, as Amanda said, fit with the journal. So those comments are very important. In terms of more specific editing comments, these should really focus on clarity and meaning. Does what has been written make sense? We don't require you to do grammar and spell checking for us or for the authors. That's covered in copy editing. If you're doing it anyway, as you go along, because some people just function like that, you're welcome to send them to us. It can be as uploaded as a document if you don't want to write out every single little issue. But other people are happy to write detailed comments. You know, line 23, there was this word that was incorrect or whatever. But as I say, that's not critical. It's the more general qualitative comments that are important. And overall, we want a recommendation. Do you think this is worth publishing or not? And often it might be, yes, it's worth publishing, but, you know, there's this and this and this that needs to be taken care of. Thanks, Melissa. When you're reviewing, be thorough, read all the sections, you know, don't skip the methodology or whatever, you know. I know when we read papers, we often don't read all the sections. If we're reading for ourselves, you know, we read the bits that'll get us the, you know, the key issues. But when you're reviewing, you really need to read everything. Be aware of personal biases. We all have our pet ideas and our pet peeves and irritations and so on. So try and be aware of that and keep those out of your review. I will talk more about constructive feedback, but be as specific as possible and as constructive as possible in your feedback to authors. Make sure that your review comments are clear and well organized. It is ironic when you get a reviewer who says, you know, well, this paper wasn't clear, and then their review is not clear. You know, we need to be able to understand clearly what you're saying. Be respectful of the author's hard work, even if there are significant flaws. If you've been involved in writing, you know how much work goes into it. So be respectful of that, and also respect confidentiality. The manuscript, until it is published, is confidential. It cannot be shared with others, and certainly cannot be quoted. Be aware of the journal guidelines. That's why Amanda said have a look at the information to authors so that you can check that authors are following that. Obviously, we check that as well, but that's important. And to say it again and again, please complete your review on time. That makes a big difference to the timing of how articles are handled. Next, please. In your feedback, be detailed, be specific, give clear examples rather than general statements. If you make a general statement, try and give an example of where that is actually seen in the article. If you say, you know, the author uses generalizations rather than specifics, then actually cite a bit in the article where that applies. Try as far as possible to identify and mention strengths and weaknesses and make suggestions for improvement, which should be actionable as far as possible, that there can be things that the authors can do something about. Use supportive language that encourages the authors. There are, Melissa will show you a place where you can just talk to the editor rather than the authors, but when you're writing to the authors, please be supportive. And you may consider including references that the authors might have left out or that you think would help to improve the article, but please don't include references to articles you have written. Next, please. So this is summarizing essentially what I've said, that in presenting your review, you think about what we need as editors, which is a guidance on the decision and on the scientific merits and potential for publication. We need to know specific concerns and clear reasons for acceptance or rejection. The authors need clear reasons for recommendations that are made. They need to have guidance on how to improve the work, whether or not it's going to be published in the journal. If it's going to be published or you think it's publishable, specific comments on how to improve it will make a big difference. But if not publishable, maybe you want to suggest where it might be publishable or what journal it might fit into, which can help the authors as well. As I said at the beginning, and Amanda's also said, we also want to be helping authors in this process. Next. When you receive the review request, the email with the title and abstract and type of article, please respond promptly. We consider it, and I mean generally in publishing, it's considered that if you publish, you should review. It's also a good way of learning as part of towards publishing. But for every article you publish, you should be reviewing 1 or 2 articles because you've benefited from the system in terms of getting your article published. So it is important to be aware of that responsibility. Don't just take on a review because you feel obliged. If you don't have time, say no. If you don't have interest in the topic, you know, if you get bored just reading the abstract, don't take it on because that's going to be negatively influence your review. If it's not within your scope of expertise, or if it's not within the kind of methodological framework that you are used to, please don't take it on. And then beware of conflicts of interest. If it's somebody from your department, your academic institution that you work with or you've published with, please declare a conflict of interest. Next, please.
That's very topical, Ian, because we've got some great questions that have come up just on that last one. Essentially, how sound does one need to be with stats to comment on the soundness of conclusions drawn? And I think that relates to your last one about, you know, your areas of expertise. So over to you.
Yeah, so that's an important question. So we don't expect people to be statisticians, biostatisticians, but if you feel there is something you know, that you're not sure of around the methodology, please raise that in your response. We do have a statistician on the editorial board, and we can refer those queries to them. I'm not an expert in stats either, so I would, you know, if that question arises, we would, and if that person can't help, we'd find somebody else. So you don't necessarily have to be an expert, but raise the issue if you don't know or you're not sure around that.
Okay, and we've also had some questions about the difference about realist reviews, the difference between reviews and systematic reviews, scoping reviews and scoping analysis. And I quickly looked up my little library of things that I use with teaching and sent some not very helpful links, one of which was actually of a realist review, not was, but Keith has very kindly put the link in there to a very useful article which talks about 14 different sorts of review articles. So if people want to click on that link, who asked that question, and thanks very much indeed, Keith. Your finding information was better than mine finding from my list there. And Nicole has asked a question about the review is not blind, so we can see who the authors are. The review is blind, but over to you, Ian.
Yeah, so at the moment we still have blinded reviews. I know there are journals. I work with another journal which is not blinded. At this stage, we are blinded. As editors, we know. But when it goes out for review, it is blinded. Yeah, and there are debates for that. And we've had those debates, and maybe in some time in the future, we may change. The reality is you can often, because it's a fairly small field in terms of rural and remote health research, and because it's regionalized and so on, you can often have a guess of who the authors are. And that's fine. I think it's all about integrity, even if you think you know who the author is, as long as it's not somebody that you're actively working with, it's fine. I don't know if you want to add anything, Amanda.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And as again, because it is a smallish community, you might have bumped into people, listened to their ideas, possibly they may have presented similar work or things at a conference that you've heard of. So yes, you won't know exactly who it is, but you might be able to guess. And obviously, if it is that close conflict of interest to somebody in your department, we suggest you probably know what areas they're working in and might suspect that. Having said that, as when we send things out to review, because we do know that, and when we know where our reviewers might be from, we try to avoid that. So I wouldn't send something from Ian's, although I wouldn't be doing his region, but we wouldn't send something from his university back to him. And just on that, within our teams of regional editors and associate editors, if there's something that one of us has published, it goes to a different region for review.
We do make mistakes, though. That's so. Please keep us in check.
This is what we try. Yeah.
Shall we move on to Melissa?
Yep. I'm just checking if there's another question. Do you recommend reviewers use methodology checklists? Perhaps we can come back to that, Keith, after Melissa's spoken about that. Yes, Jacob, the whole review will be recorded, and I think, Melissa, we're sending out copies of the slides.
Yes, that's right.
And a question from you, and I'm a rural primary care clinician. That is the lens that I often provide feedback on. Is that acceptable? The answer is that is more than acceptable. That is exactly what we're after. And when we are looking at sending out for review, what we might try and do is, for example, pick somebody we know who might be particularly interested in that methodology from an academic point of view. We'll be looking for somebody who gives us that primary care clinician's lens. Is this important? Does this make a difference to me and my practice or me and my community? So yes, very definitely. Okay, so over to Melissa.
Hello, everyone. So my part of the webinar today is how does this all work in the RRH website? So if you're on our reviewer panel, the first time you'll hear of an invitation is you'll get an email from sender RRH. One of us will have chosen you as a reviewer, as someone who probably has expertise in this area. So a good tip to make sure that you're receiving emails from us is to make sure that you whitelist sender RRH. And whitelisting basically means to make sure that RRH is an approved sender, not someone who should end up in junk or spam. So in most email programs, that basically means that you're adding RRH to your contacts list. So here's RRH in a Gmail inbox. And this is just the bottom of the email that you'll receive from us. Up the top, it tells you what kind of paper it is, and it also includes the abstract, so you can get, as Ian and Amanda both mentioned, you can get a bit of an idea about what the paper's about and whether it does match your expertise. You can actually accept or decline the invitation to review straight from this email. So you can click on the blue accept or decline. You don't have to log in to do that. And now I'm going to show you over on the website how it all works. So I'll just bear with me a moment while I stop sharing and start sharing again. Okay. So if all goes to plan, you should be able to see the website. And I'm logged in up the top as Dr. Test Reviewer, which is obviously not my name, just for the purposes of this exercise. So down here on the side, if I scroll down, on the page, you can see on the right hand side, it says My Reviews. So I click into there. And I can see I've agreed to review this article. I click on the article title. And it should open up the review page. So if I scroll down on this page, you can see that down the bottom there's a reviewer PDF. You can download that PDF using this little blue arrow. And when you might choose to look at the PDF on your screen, and maybe you'd like to annotate that PDF, and you can always send that annotated PDF back to us by email, as Ian said before, or perhaps you might like to print the PDF and make some hard copy comments on it as you go. That's up to you. We do ask that you don't send the PDF around to anyone. At the moment, it's a confidential PDF between the journal and you. So once you've got the actual PDF, you can start entering some review items. So you can't actually submit this review unless you've made a recommendation. And the recommendations are accept with minor changes, accept or consider with major changes. So not necessarily accept, that will need some further consideration, or reject outright. Over here on the left, you can see there are stars. This is the technical rating area. And anywhere you see a little I, like these ones, that means information. So if you hover over that I, you can get a little bit more information about whatever you're pointing to. Basically, we ask that you fill in all the technical ratings that are appropriate. If it's a review article, there might not be any ethical approval information necessary. If it's a quantitative manuscript, you might not need to fill out any qualitative items. And then there's some overall ratings down at the bottom. You just click on the stars wherever you like to indicate where they should be. Over here on the right, there are some little windows that are available for free text, so I can type straight into there. So you might be really tech savvy and just type straight in there. But something that most people probably do is to use their own text editor, Word or something similar, and type a response in there. That way you can do some spell checking and just make sure it's all correct before you submit. So that's a free text window for comments to author and comments to the editor. We ask that you definitely fill out the comments to the author bit. That's the bit that will go to the author. The confidential comments to the editor will definitely not go to the author. So that's, as Ian mentioned before, where you might put in some comments that are maybe a bit more direct. You want to make sure that you're quite sensitive and constructive in these ones to the author. After you've submitted your, after you've prepared your review, I should say, you can then submit using this button down here. After you've pressed submit, oh, look at that, a recommendation is required. I didn't do the right thing. I'm going to accept with major changes. It says thank you for reviewing, and you can no longer edit this page. So I'll go back to our screen. Okay. So how to join the RRH reviewer list. First of all, you need to register a profile on the RRH website. So you just go to www.rrh.org.au and you can register a profile there. You might already be someone who's registered on the website. After you're registered, you can email me, and my email's up on the screen, with your CV, your areas of expertise, some keywords particular to that area of expertise and to you, and your availability, the number of reviews you might like to be invited to per year. You can always decline invitations, always. Most people say somewhere between 3 and 5. There is support for reviewers. I hope that this is a major message from this webinar. There's the guidelines on the website. So if you scroll all the way down on the homepage, there's the information for reviewers and the information for authors. We try to select you very carefully based on your expertise, and you should also keep remembering, as we've said before, that you're not alone. There's other reviewers who will be also looking at the paper. There's also the editors who are looking at the paper, and you can always contact us if you're worried about anything. Some more support and some guideline might be to just read other reviews. So this is really handy. And actually, when you submit a review, and this happens with most journals, I think, when you submit your review and the editor makes a decision based on the reviews, they'll send their decision and all of the reviewer reports back to the author, and they'll also send them to all the reviewers who reviewed. So you can actually at that point have a look at the reviews and see what the other reviewers said about the article. And that way you can get a kind of idea if you're on the right track or on the same track as other people. Of course, you might actually disagree, and that's fine. But that's a good way to kind of just to see what others are up to. You can always ask for feedback. So please don't hesitate to email us and let us know if you're someone who wants some mentoring, or if you'd just like to know if the level of your feedback is appropriate. Just talk to us, no problem. We definitely want to hear from you. Always ask if you're unsure. If you're unsure about it, conflict of interest, anything at all, just let us know. We're all about the communication. And questions? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry, Amanda.
There have been some specific questions for you, Melissa. One of them is, are there any limits on the text boxes? Any word limits on those text boxes for the feedback going back to editors and authors?
That's a great question. There is no limit. I've never found that we've run out of space. So yeah, there's a challenge for you.
Okay, brilliant.
Not 5,000 words, please.
It might be. And Karen has asked, where do you upload the PDF if your comments are written on it?
Another great question. So we don't at the moment have a place to upload the PDF on that review screen. So you just email it to me and I'll upload it for you. We do intend to include provision for that very soon, because I think that's important. We do have to. Yeah. Oh, the trick is that because we're using double-blind review, we need to de-identify those PDFs when they come in. So we're just working out a mechanism for that at the moment.
And obviously those comments are really helpful, but you also do need to fill in the star ratings and the other comments as well. Nicole's asked, do manuscripts flagged for minor or major changes come back to the reviewer for another round? Do you want to answer that one, Ian?
I can. So usually minor changes means a decision will be made by the editor, and the editor will decide if the changes have been made according to what were required, and will handle it. Major changes usually means it needs to go for another round of review, but it not necessarily go back to the same reviewers. So there's some journals where there's the expectation, if you reviewed, you will review it again. I just got one of those yesterday from another journal, and oh no, I really didn't want to see this again. So we actually give you, if we do ask you to review an article again, we will contact you and you say, are you willing to have a look at this again? It is useful to have somebody who's looked at it before to look at it again, but that's not the standard practice. We will quite often send it out to completely new reviewers.
Yeah, or it's handled slightly differently. So because I've got a terrific team of 3 associate editors, we look at the major revisions among ourselves. But again, rarely, but occasionally do ask the original reviewer to look at it again. But it's certainly not routine. There's been a question from Keith. Do you recommend reviewers use methodology checklists? I mean, my answer is no, really. But I suppose we ask you to use what is within your scope of expertise and what you would normally be thinking about and using in your reviewing, but we certainly don't have that specific recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say absolutely. If it's helpful to the reviewer, that's great, but it's not something we require.
Susan has asked, do you see other reviews if the paper is ultimately rejected? So, Melissa, do you want to go to that one?
Sure. Yes, you do. So, just the same way that when the when the editor decides that a paper needs some further revision before maybe accepting or considering again, just the same way when the editor makes a decision to reject an article after review, the author is sent the decision and the reviewer reports, and all of the reviewers also get the decision and the reports.
Okay. Catherine has asked, if you're interested in submitting a paper or have an idea for research, can we speak to the editors? So I might take that one. Certainly, if you're interested in submitting a paper and you're wondering if you think it's suitable for the journal or not, please do write to us, and we can have that discussion about whether we think this is the right journal for that particular article. Sometimes people talk to us and say, look, I've done this project, I'm thinking about submitting a paper, would you look at it? And we say, of course, yes, but that's not the same as promising that we'll publish it. And an idea for research, I'm not sure if the editors are quite the right first people to talk about that if it's a broad research area, but certainly if it's talking about, I've done this particular research or project and I'm wondering about what's the most useful form to submit it in, what sort of a paper it should be, yes, we would be very keen to help and support on that. Ian and Melissa, I don't know if you want to add to that.
The only thing I want to add is say, please, that communication should come through the journal office, not to individual
not to us individuals.
Editors. Individually, the journal office will handle it and pass it on to the most appropriate person to respond to it.
And I think Ian, we made that point last time. This is a voluntary labour of love for us. Some journals, I believe, do pay their editors and their editorial team. Rural and Remote Health doesn't. So, you know, that's why one of the reasons why we like to channel things through the journal. Yeah.
But along with that, it allows the fact that we are one of the very few journals left in the world which is both free to publish and free to read. Most journals are funded by either charging people to read or charging people to publish, and we do neither. So we are I wouldn't say unique, but one of a very small group of journals who do that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we said we've got a very small team there that works so hard with Melissa. One last question here. Any tips and tricks regarding feedback about tables and figures? Ian?
Well, you know, the silence, I guess it means we don't have I mean, yeah, for me, one of the key things that I find is that people repeat what is in the text and in the table. And I think for me, that's the key thing. Is this table or figure adding additional information that is not captured in the text? And to make sure that there's not duplication. Sometimes people will write it in the text, put it in a table and give us a figure. And really we want to have strategic figures. I'm not sure we have any particular limits, Melissa, on the number of tables and figures, but I mean, one doesn't want to have too many. Maybe you can advise about the limits. Sorry, I can't even remember what we have in terms of that.
We don't have specific limits, but you can certainly tell if they're excessive. We also allow supplementary material. So quite often people like to use that for their very enormous data tables or questionnaires and things like that.
And which can be useful if people are wanting to replicate the project or something. The other thing I'd add to that is not only looking for duplication, but do the tables sometimes have information which really doesn't add to the whole argument and is just there not extraneously, but it was data that was collected, but it's not germane to the arguments and the conclusions that are being drawn. And again, I'd point that out to the authors.
Yeah, maybe I can add to that. I mean, I think it's common with more inexperienced authors to feel that all their data needs to be presented, but actually you only present the data that fits with the focus of your article. And so, you know, if reviewers can point that out, that is helpful.
Okay, we've got a couple of quick ones here. How strict should one be regarding word counts, especially qualitative research? Look, I think the word counts are there. And that's something that in our region, the regional associate editor team will often pick up on. But you know, a bit of leeway, but really, you know, maybe 10%, maybe 5%, but no, we are quite strict about them. Yes.
But it's not something we expect the reviewers to be monitoring.
No.
It's something we would monitor. But if you read an article and you find this is going on too long, it tells you something. You know, please make that comment without even looking at the word count. You know, if an article feels too long, it is too long.
It is too long. Yeah, that's right. That's right. If it's getting too wordy and you're thinking, oh my goodness, they could have just said that in half as much. So some very nice thank yous of appreciation. And again, thank you all for joining in. A technical question for you, Melissa. Can you tell us where RRH Journal is indexed?
Yeah, sure. So RRH is on EBSCO, PubMed, Web of Science, Scopus. I should get up the website and have a look, actually. Who else? Informit. We're all over the place. Cab Abstracts, I think. Have I missed anything? I think we're indexed all over the place.
Yeah, we're widely indexed.
We're widely indexed. It says it on the About Us page, actually.
Yep. And okay, couple more. How old can the data be? Look, I think I don't think there's a hard and fast answer to that, but presenting stuff that was done, 10 years ago is probably not relevant, but it depends a bit on what it is, when it was done, the time span. I think it depends, I think, is the answer to that. But over to you, Ian.
Yeah, no, I would say the same thing. I mean, generally I'd say data that's more than 5 years old, one would have to justify it. And I think that's the issue. It's explaining why and reasoning why that data might still be useful and relevant.
And also there's I noticed that reviewers often comment if the reference list is also pretty old.
Yes, yeah. I think
that must be up to date regardless.
Yeah. I think that's important, that sometimes there is a bit of a time lag between people doing the research and doing their initial literature review and then doing their research or project and then writing it up. And, in that couple of years, the literature needs to be updated in the reference list. Okay, that's the end of the questions, Melissa and Ian. So over to you.
Well, I think the timing is perfect. I think our time is up. We said we'd keep this to an hour, and I think we've done it. It's been a great session. We made some mistakes on the other day when we did the first one. So we kind
that was me.
I think no, you weren't the only one.
No, you weren't. My typos.
So yeah, I think this has been great. Thank you for your participation. And we look forward to hearing from you in terms of being involved as a reviewer. As Melissa said, please contact her if you are interested. Melissa, any last comments from you?
Oh, no, nothing except for thank you very much. A big thank you to you, Ian and Amanda, for a great session. And thank you to everyone who came along today. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you all. Bye.